Welcome everybody to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. So thrilled that you're here. I'm excited to introduce my guest. She's a dear friend, an amazing woman, a bright light for this world. And she is the owner, founder, CEO of Niche Pressworks, Nicole Gebhardt. Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, my honor, Tammy. Thank you.
You're welcome. You are what I said. You are truly a light, and I love what you do for this world. You basically let people showcase their light. And by doing this, you help them publish their dreams through books. And that is such a gift. And so many people have so much to share. And I just love the platform that you provide, the process, everything you do in bringing their dreams to light. So I am one of those people. I'm now on board with you. And I'm so excited because you're working with me on my book, which I'm super, super excited about. So I'm excited to share you with the world. And I want to talk about, of course, that, but I also want to talk about who you are and some of the things that have gotten you to this point and why you're doing this. Because the way I look at this with you is this is a true purpose and a calling. And those things don't happen accidentally. They happen with intention, and they happen with energy and understanding and drive. So give us a little background, everybody that's listening, some of your history, where you come from. You don't have to go into the deep trenches of your background, but just give us a highlight of kind of a Cliff's Notes of where you came from, where you grew up and how you sort of got into this boss lady mentality and really owning your gifts.
Yeah. Well, it's backwards, right? So I used to tell people, I don't really say this so much anymore, but I'm a recovering corporate girl, just like you. So I worked in a man's world. So I worked at Caterpillar and I managed employee communications and HR strategy for Caterpillar for over 12 years. Loved my job, was climbing the corporate ladder. It was at a time at Caterpillar where they recognized that women were one of the strongest futures in the workforce. And so they had identified a few people they were grooming for the executive office, and I was on that list. And I loved it. And I was a type A personality. And so, in corporate America, when they say you're a high potential employee, that it translates to throw what you can at them and see what they've got. And I was game on, right? I love that.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, challenge accepted. That was me. And I love a good challenge. And so my husband was also at Caterpillar. So we were dual income, no kids at the time. And I got promoted to a major position at the company headquarters in Peoria, Illinois. And I worked for three, what would be called now senior vice presidents at the same time, managing their employee communication strategy, right? And so things were going great, except for it was also the time in my life that it was time for me to start having babies. And I figured I would put the babies in daycare, and that was my work. I was going to continue working and because I loved what I did. But I lost my first baby to miscarriage at about 16 weeks. Then I got pregnant again, and the doctors told me the first one, 1 in 4 pregnancies and a miscarriage. I got pregnant again right as I had accepted that new position, and at 7.5 weeks or 7.5 months pregnant, they identified that the baby had a rare heart defect. And so they started doing all these tests. And to make a long story short, she was born beautiful on the outside, but they couldn't save her on the inside. And so we lost her. She lived 12 hours. Nice. And so I went through all the genetic testing. They said everything appears fine. We don't know why, you're free to go have a baby again. So I got pregnant twice more in the next year, and we lost 2 more miscarriages. And it was about that time I started saying, all the doctors are baffled. And about that point, I started saying like something else is at play here. And I started to wonder if it wasn't the stress level of what I was going through.
Right.
And because, I was all in at Caterpillar, and I think my little body couldn't handle creating a baby and all the things that it was being asked to do as well. So I had a wonderful support team. I mean, I want to give credit to the management team because they recognized this was the most important thing for me. So they created a new position for me. I was employee communications at the time. They created a brand new position for me called HR strategist. And they moved me into that job. And my stress level plummeted, but I had gotten a major promotion out of the deal. Right.
Wow.
And I proceeded to get pregnant and have healthy baby number 5, and then eventually healthy baby number 6. But it taught me a really important lesson, which is, wow, I could love my job more and it could be half as stressful. Like, right. And I could make more money. And it was a really important lesson. But by the time baby number 6 was born, I decided I just worked way too hard to have these kids to put them in daycare.
Mm.
And so I left Caterpillar. The hardest thing I've ever done was to let go of that career. And I came home and I was a stay-at-home mommy. And that lasted all of like a few weeks.
Wait,
I was
wait. I
like,
want to pause for a second because that's a big point that you saw something in that was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe a first for you to realize, wait a minute, I'm focused so much on this that now the energy is serving me up something totally even better because I'm serving me, right?
right.
Your
Yeah.
dream was to be a mom and you
Yes.
thought, I'm really going to choose myself here. This matters to me. And then look what happened. The
Yeah.
universe opened up for you and suddenly you had a better job, a better, cushier situation, everything, more money, all of that presented itself to you. So if that's not manifestation based on self-love, I don't know what is. Really. That's a
Yeah.
big point.
Yeah.
Did you recognize that then?
No, because I was strictly looking at it from, physical eyes, right? But it what
Mm-hmm.
I did just start to realize, like, wait a minute. And then as we all kind of wake up, I started to realize later on, like certain things would happen the way, I'd start to visualize the home that I wanted or the family that I wanted and things, and then they'd suddenly show up and I would be like, well, that's interesting. And then, it wasn't until probably in the last 10 years I really began to understand that we create our world around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
but so I left Caterpillar and I was instantly bored. I'd go to the mommy events and I just didn't fit into the mommy events because I was solely driven, and everybody else was happy to be full-time mommy and I was frankly miserable.
Right.
So I started doing freelance marketing consulting. And that's where I started working with business owners. And I found that they just had no clue what to do with their business and marketing. And so started working with them. And what happened was my girls now are about 5 and, they're 2 years apart. And so they're about 5 and 7 at this point. I've got them steady in school and I'm starting to get pretty aggressive about doing freelance business consulting and marketing. And I started doing these workshops where I was teaching business owners like how to think about marketing and managing their business and their clients and pricing and all the things. And I realized like these business owners were exhausted. They were working all the time, bringing home the bacon, frying it up in a pan. And here, the advice at the time, this was back in about 2008, 2010, was, post to Facebook 5 times a day, run an email newsletter. You should email them every day, right? You should also go to the BNI networks, all the things. And I'm like writing this out for them as this is what you need to do. And I realized this is ridiculous. I'm doing the
Wow.
same thing these people that Caterpillar and my situation had done to me. And I'm
Go
like,
harder, work harder, push, 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 right?
this isn't healthy. Right. And so I actually just stopped and I started praying about it. And I'm like, show me, God, like, what could I do? So I asked what I called the question. And the question was, if I could get their attention for a short amount of time, what could we create that would last them 6 months or longer? Like we could put their marketing on autopilot.
Mm.
This was in 2010. Um, and I actually got 3 different ideas from that. And so the first one was instead of blogging, we used to teach people to just build an automated follow-up email system. Like every client as they come in gets a series of like 10 emails, right? And at the end of 10 emails, if they haven't signed, they're pretty much gone anyway,
Right.
right? Put that on autopilot instead of trying every week to create new content. So that was
Follow
one.
up, follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, they just automated the follow-up and let it go. And then we used to do a thing called, 6 months of social media in an afternoon. And, these things now are a little more common, but in 2010, like this was groundbreaking.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and the third thing that was very unusual was I was like, what if we created a book? Right. And this was when self-publishing was just an infant. Like, and if you came out with any old book, like this is where people were like, I'm making millions on Kindle because everybody was just getting their first Kindle for Christmas and there were no books on Kindle. So you could buy anything, right, on Kindle.
Yeah.
But so I started doing books, and that was in 2011. And to make a long story short, what I realized as I started doing books and then more books, and I became known as the book girl, was I inherently viewed books differently because I was a business and marketing strategist, and I'd done all this communication strategy. So when I worked with my clients, I was viewing it very differently than if a publisher was viewing it or a marketing person. Like I was doing all the things that I knew to do strategically inside of a book and with a book. And so that's
Like you
how.
were reverse engineering it essentially.
Exactly. Great way to put it. Yeah. I was reverse engineering what we wanted and then what we needed out of a book and what was the right book for those goals.
So you became known as the book girl. I love that. So
Yeah.
you had never done anything in publishing per se. I mean, this was totally a whole new beast for you. So
Yeah.
how did you dive into that? Because that's a big thing to take on and tackle for someone that didn't have any experience in print publishing. That's a big step. So how did that go?
Well, I actually, so the rest of the story is I actually have a degree in graphic design. That's where I started. So, and
Mm-hmm.
then when I was at Caterpillar, I ran the employee newsletter and newspaper. We had a monthly newspaper and then we had an annual magazine. So I ran all of that at Caterpillar. So I had great relationships with printers. I knew all of that. My degree at from college, I had taken a semester on publishing back in the old days when they didn't really have, shoot, for the internet when I was in
Right,
college.
right.
But so it just, you can look backwards and see how all the stars aligned and like, oh, but at this point, I was just figuring it out. Marie Forleo likes to say everything is figure outable. And that's my whole motto. My whole life is we can figure this out and we just have.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, well, and it goes back to kind of what we were saying in the very beginning of this conversation, which was you basically put your energy towards it and said, this is where I'm going. And everything was provided. You asked first of all, you asked God and you said, I need some help. And, how can I really help these people? Because you saw a need in people that were struggling. And you said,
Mhm.
how can I help them do this better? Because what I'm providing is just creating more headache and more work and what they're trying to get out of. Right. So you said, I need help. How do I re-engineer the help that they need? And then all of a sudden you got the answers because
Mhm.
you ask. That's a very simple thing people miss, that you need to ask. You need to look for answers and then listen. And then you can start moving forward into that, the mission that's at hand. So you clearly did a great job of that. And then with the book publishing, I find that interesting too. Like you said, everything's figure outable. There's
Mhm.
always a path. And the more you said yes to the path, the more it lit up and it made it so you could actually do it. So that's manifestation really at its crux is just that. It's like leaning into the path and listening and paying attention. And then all of a sudden the path lights up and there you are. So moving forward in the publishing world, how did the story kind of begin with you? Were you thinking about publishing for your own self? What was your passion around? Because eventually, yes, it's a marketing tool, which like you said, it was like reverse engineering a business per se, right? Around publishing, which is cool, which is super, super niche, which is why
Mhm.
you're called Niche Pressworks, right?
Yeah.
But for yourself, were you thinking, I need to write a book myself so I can actually get this out there? So how did that develop? Because that's another, purpose-led passion thing. So how did that go?
Yeah, I did 4 books in my first year, and one of them was mine. This is a little meta. I wrote a book on how to use a book to get business, right? I think it's all of like
Right.
50 pages long. So my first,
Wow.
so that's what I did it because, and I wrote it literally in 7 days and it's like 50 pages long. And again, remember, this is 2010 and you were a big deal if you had a 50-page book,
Oh
right?
yeah, big, big deal.
Yeah, the standards have changed, but it was also intentionally short because I wanted people to read it cover to cover. And so, now we're so strategic about everything we do. Like the page count is part of the strategy, and longer books are for certain purposes and shorter books are for others. But I did my book, and then I had 3 clients. I had 2 co-author women who were in the Medicare, Medicaid financial advising space. I had a pastor who was working with juveniles in the juvenile detention center. And then
Wow.
I had an accountant, a CPA, who had just bought a firm from a guy that had had it for like 50 years. And so
Hmm.
for all 3 of them, I said, "Hey, let's try this." And they were all like, absolutely, they were willing. And so I helped them write their own book. The pastor's book was the longest. I think it was about 150 pages. And then the other 2 women had books that were running around 70 to 100 pages. And the difference in their business and their marketing and the clarity of their message was so dramatic. I was floored,
Right.
right? And then there was their confidence, and there was their ability to get on stages and in front of right people. And the CPA was one of them. She was, she sent me a note and she said, "I can tell you when I'm in a sales meeting with a prospect," she said, "the prospects will be sitting there saying, well, if I do this with you, if." And she said, "And then I slide my book across the table and all of a sudden the client goes, oh, well, when we start." right?
It's a whole other level of authority and confidence,
Oh,
like you said.
wow. So then I just, that was over 250 books ago. And I just, everyone, I've worked one-on-one with all these business owners and just really mastered the craft. I've studied books, what's happening. I've studied marketing and conversion. And again, here's what I tell people when they meet me. It's like, you got to throw out what you know about publishing, because what we do is so different here. Like my biggest hurdle is overcoming that, because what I'm really doing is fixing your business and helping you clarity. And you and I are doing that. Like we're talking about, like, think big, Tammy, like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's a fun process when you're working with somebody who wants to understand all the things that you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's like you're reverse engineering their whole thought process of where they're going and what this big picture path is, even though they don't necessarily know, but it gives some sort of structure or framework for, well, what's the reason for this book? One of the things I love that you always say is that people come to you and they say, I have a book and I want you to publish it. And they've already written their book, right? They think, well, this is my story and it's time. Like I need to get this out in the world. And when you sit down with them, most of the time you're like, that's not the book. That's not
Yeah.
the book, because you really have them examine what the reason is, how did this come to be, and restructure where it can actually take them. It's a whole nother strategy and totally different approach. So how do people handle it when they come to you and they've literally written a book and they're like, here it is. And you're like, wait a minute. So what happens? How does that work?
Yeah, so I've had two people this week. So the first thing I'll say, my ideal situation is come to me before you write the book. Like that's the best situation, because we have a process that we go through and we can talk about it. But the fun for me is helping you from the beginning. But every once in a while, about half the people that come to me have already started writing to some extent. So I talked to a woman earlier today that she has been writing her book for 18 months. And I'm like, okay, right. Whoa, we would have been done published and collecting a lot of cash by now. So
Right.
let's talk about it. But as we went through and I'm just poking at, well, what's your why? What's your business? And what's your offers that you're going to do? Like she had the wrong offers and she was starting at the wrong end of the pyramid. We flipped all of it. And then she began to realize, oh, if that's really where the real income opportunity is, then this book won't serve me. And so as soon as you start helping them get in alignment, and this, let's talk about alignment. I think, I was thinking about this last night in you because we talked yesterday about your strategy. That's what I'm looking at when I work with authors is I'm trying to get all the things in alignment. I want to understand what you are called to do. Like, what's your mission? What does success look like for you? Who's your dream client? What does their success look like to them? What are your offers? Like, what's your business model? What does that, like, does that align with those two? And then when you look at the book last, we're like, okay, does your book align with all the needs of all the other players in this? And when we get everything in alignment, then we've got the right book. And most people, they don't have that expertise. Like, and so you need somebody who's able to poke and look at different angles and challenge your thoughts and expand your ideas. And, you and I talked about it yesterday when we were just kind of talking about concepts. I'm always like a rubber band, just stretching you as far as I can stretch you, just to help you think bigger and
Mhm.
differently. And then we find the idea in there.
Well, I think it's so interesting too, because speaking to the word alignment, we've talked about this, you and I, on a spiritual level, is that I think it's hilarious, not ha funny, but just ironic, whatever the word you want to put in there, is that this is all about alignment. And your strategy is much like our alignment to life and where we're meant to go and what we're meant to do, right? Our purpose, stepping into our purpose. I also love that you are not shy about saying, look, are you a movement maker? Are you trying to start a movement, which is clearly what I'm trying to do? And so, not trying, that's what I'm meant to do. So it's like stepping into your alignment and centering yourself and centering where you're going and understanding how everything aligns so you can actually step forward to do those things, because that's where you're being called to go, right? So it's really interesting that just your approach on writing a book is so much in line with really how it works for people's lives. I mean, it's all about alignment. The more aligned we are with where we're supposed to go and what our heart is calling us to do and how we're meant to serve this world is the same thing. So it's almost like you're writing, I mean, as you're writing your book, literally, you're also stepping into the book of life, which is, where am I meant to go? What am I supposed to do? What is the impact? What's the movement, right? So there's so much energy that goes in, and again, it's fully, I believe, fully in alignment with how it really works everywhere, right? The big picture. So your business and the things that you're meant to do, all of a sudden, and I think in your process too, as people start to talk through this, you are stretching them like a rubber band saying, let's think bigger. What is really calling you? I would imagine, Nicole, that in some of your initial calls, it probably can get quite emotional because you're talking about people that are talking about and moving into something that's bigger, that they feel is bigger than them. And it's intimidating. And they're like, I hadn't thought of it like that. Do you have any experiences you can share with people that they're like, oh my gosh, this is way more than I thought it was going to be in this experience with writing a book with you?
Yeah, I think, well, we can just talk about it. One of our favorite people, and you've been on your podcast, is Ed Rush, right?
Yes.
So the first thing I will say before we dig into that is it's fun learning from you as well. Like it just, and just you and I are learning from each other. You're learning my process, I'm learning yours. I have the best job in the world because I get to work with experts and learn how you think and apply those. And it's just really fun. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And you're spot on. You're teaching me about alignment on the outer world while I'm teaching you about alignment in your book and your business. And so it's very fun. So I appreciate that. But Ed Rush is a good example, and he's public about this. So we've talked about it before. But Ed has written before his most recent book, which is God Talks. It's sitting over here. Ed had written 5 books, right? So, and he'd taken all of them to bestseller. And Ed is a former Top Gun fighter pilot and instructor. Everything Ed does is fast and furious. He's a brilliant business strategist. He's been my business coach. He's your business coach now as well.
Mm-hmm.
The man is sharp. And he's also certified over 1,000 people as publishing coaches. So in fact, that's actually where I met him. I was already doing books, but he had this event where he was certifying people, or he was helping people become a best-selling coach or a best-selling author in a weekend. It was a thing he did with somebody else. And I flew out because I didn't know how to do bestseller campaigns on Amazon. So I flew out to San Diego to go through that, and I met him.
Oh, that's what pulls you to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we went to this event. It's a fun story. He was doing with another guy named Mike Koenig. And so Ed and Mike had this weekend event called Write a Bestseller in a Weekend or Become a Best-Selling Author in a Weekend. So you flew out there and literally you would come up with your idea. You would come up with a title, a subtitle, and an outline. And then there were designers in the back of the room. They would mock up a cover. You would upload it to Amazon as a pre-order campaign. And then everybody in the room would buy each other's books. And on a book you weren't even written the next day, like by day 3, you had a book on Amazon with a pre-order campaign and you were best-selling author because everybody in the room bought each other's book.
Oh my gosh, that was the strategy in the workshop.
Yeah, 2015, right? That was the strategy.
Wow.
Right. That was 2015. Like we were still,
That's cool.
that's where this whole bestseller thing came, kind of got a little cheesy, right?
Yeah, I know.
But at the time, there were a lot of people that just really jumped on that and turned a lot of people into very successful entrepreneurs in a very fast period of time. So it was good, bad, and ugly. But that's where I met Ed. And Ed, immediately, I was like, this is a man with incredible integrity, despite that cheesy kind of gimmick thing. I spoke on a stage there because I got certified as a best-selling coach there. And so I got to speak. And so, like I said, he did this with there were over 1,000 certified publishers, because everybody's like, there's money in this, I could do this, right? So I came home and that was it. And then a couple of years later, I looked up Ed and I'm like, I need a coach. Where is that guy? So I found him and I became a coaching client. And that was back in 2018. And he was working on, at this point, his 6th book. I knew at the time he was kind of poking around with this idea of God Talks. And I'm like, I want to publish that book. And he had, of course, the man knows how to self-publish. He'd self-published every book prior to that. And this time, I was like, I want to publish your book. I want to help you. I want to help you. Because he was still doing Fast and Furious, right? He was kind of, a lot of the philosophy was good is good enough. Like, get it out there and get going. So when he came to me with God Talks, finally, and we're getting ready to go, his idea was he was going to publish it and launch it into the world and then go do the next thing, like every other book he had done. And I stopped him and I said, Ed, and this is my gifting. Like, I see potential and opportunity in people. That's my divine spiritual gifting.
Yeah, I love that.
And I said, Ed, you don't understand. Like, this isn't just a book. Like, this is a 10-year brand. You have an opportunity, right? Like, this is a movement. And
a movement. You said it right there. Like, this is much bigger.
Well, I told you it was much bigger. It ended up, movement came up a little later in the conversation, but I just said, this is like a 10-year brand. This is a big thing. And I said, we were arguing because he wanted the first book to be God Talks for Business. And I
Mm-hmm.
was arguing, I'm like, no, the first book is God Talks. And I said, then you do God Talks for business, God Talks for teens, God Talks for marriages, God Talks for, I don't, all the things. Like, you've got something worth gold here. And that's where,
It's a brand. You also saw it as an
yeah,
overarching brand in so many different categories that are going to relate to so many different people.
yeah, it was so much bigger. Like, he was ready to write the book and move on and do the next thing. And I remember, because this has happened a few times in my life where I've had a client that just goes, whoa. And they lean back in their chair and they look to the sky, and then you just see all the download as their mind just starts to go, whoa, like what just happened? Um,
Yeah. Download.
and he said, let me think about that. Let me think. Okay. Let me think about that. And he called me later and he's like, you're right. Let's do this. Like, and he ended up, what happened was he created God Talks. He's now getting ready to do God Talks for business. He's going to be at our Scottsdale workshop, which we can talk about in a minute. So he's going to be there working on his next book with us. But it really then, everything he was doing became clear, like how it all aligned, all the things he had done in his past, the things he knew he wanted to do in the future, everything began to become clear, all from this brand,
It was
right?
all coming into alignment, all
Yeah,
of it.
enlightenment. It was really fun to be able to, I'm just the vessel. It was really fun to be able to have a front row seat and see that happen. And now to have a front row seat, this book is as much his baby as is my baby. All these books are my babies too. Like,
Yeah.
how much I'm involved with you and how seriously I take it. And so when, he was on the 700 Club the other day, and I'm like, I'm so proud that here's my baby. Oh, Ed and that baby is on the 700 Club. So I just think it's incredibly awesome what we get to do.
You know what? I have to stop you for a second because I just saw another piece of alignment that you maybe or maybe have not recognized, which is you just said my baby.
Oh,
So all you wanted to do was be a mom and have
yeah,
babies, and you're creating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of them.
yeah,
Did you see that alignment?
yeah. Wasn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, there's that story in the Bible about Abraham, right? It said, look to the stars and look to the sand, and you see, that'll be all your generations. I get that. I get that through you, Tammy, the ripple effect of what happens, and through Ed, all the people that saw that 700 Club that read those books, you're coaching with Ed because you got my magazine and you read the story of Ed and you're like, I got to read the book. And you read the book and you're like, I got to meet the man. And I'm like, here's the man. And all those kind of relationships are here because of what I said yes to, what Ed said yes to. I just think it's the most incredible opportunity. And my
Isn't
team
it? Yeah, it's amazing how it all comes together. Go ahead, your team what?
got like with just everything. We all realize we're not just creating books here. Like, we really are. The epiphany we've had in the last year is how I've shifted the brand. And we really talk about creating niche leaders and movement makers. So, some of our clients are literally just writing a book because we're working with a guy right now. His book will come out, I think, before the end of the year. That his gifting and specialty is facing the IRS if you get one of those awful letters in the mail, right?
Mm,
And he's written a really great book to help those people. He's not trying to create a movement. Lord knows we don't need a movement on facing the
everything.
IRS, right?
Yeah.
But he wants to be a niche leader, right? He wants to be respected among the top in his industry, and he needs a really great book. He doesn't want to, he wants a really great book to do that, and he needs it, and his people deserve it. And so, yeah, so I love it. We're niche leaders and movement makers. That's what we're after.
Yeah, I love that. It's cool, like you said, not every book that comes into your experience with you helping make another baby is something that's going to be so monumentally huge and start a movement, but every piece is just as valuable as the next
Yeah.
because it's truly a mission and a purpose that whoever's writing it and is a piece of it is trying to bring to the world, right? Which is helpful to
Yeah.
anybody involved. So they're doing it because they're being called to do it, regardless of how big it gets. It's truly a calling that they really want to express. So you make
Yeah.
it such a beautiful process to be able to express it. But backing up to Ed, I do remember this so well because I met you through Dina, our dear friend Dina, who was my business coach for a long time and still is. She still coaches me just because she's such a great friend. But she introduced us at one of her events. And that was the first time I was stepping into a totally new version of Tammy. And that was exciting and new. And you were there to witness that. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you and I then started talking. And then, of course, I was like, it's time. It's time. And
Yeah.
then I reached out to you. And of course, that got the ball rolling in our direction. And then when I received all your materials, and of course, that's when I saw Ed. and read about his book, God Talks, it really spoke to me. Not only is the book, and we've had him on here, if you want to listen to his podcast, it's great. His message is awesome. Ed is amazing. And so, but his whole thing is about stepping into and knowing where you're meant to go. And that's, again, by asking. He uses the word God. Not everybody uses the word God, but there's lots of ways to call that in. But he has this book, God Talks. And the thing that I loved about his book was not only his message about asking and reaching out and trying to align yourself with where you're meant to go, it was also about seeing the potential of what we all are and what we have and how we can move forward into that. So his whole, like you said, when I read his whole thing, it was funny, it was relatable, it was witty. I mean, there were so many elements to his book, God Talks, that I was like, because as soon as I read it in your initial outreach with all of your marketing material, I was like, oh my gosh. So I immediately bought the book because it was calling to me. I read his book cover to cover and I laughed out loud and I just really loved it. And then I reached out to you and I was like, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And so you graciously introduced me to Ed. And of course, he had his event here, and then we were off to the races. So now there's so many things at play that involve you and Ed, which are great coaches for me, both of you.
Yeah.
But the thing that I love about what you're doing, Nicole, is your vision. You really have vision. And that's why you're such a valuable publishing coach, because you are a publishing coach and you're doing so much more than helping somebody write their book and their passion. You're helping them expand and see things in a much bigger way. Again, no matter how big it's going to get, it's not even about that. It's about the fact that you say, hey, now wait a minute. What is your mission here? What is calling you to do this? And let's take a look at what that means. Maybe it's a huge world movement. Maybe it's something that's extremely helpful to people out there because you've been affected by it and you want to share it. It's a gift, right? You're gifting it to the world by sharing your knowledge and your expertise. So I just love your process. I love how you do things. I love your vision around it. It's such a bigger vision than I think most publishers. How would you say moving forward, because you're doing so many things, because I've talked to you about this specifically about alignment and magnetizing the things that are meant for us. How do you see this going for you? What do you think is the next thing? Because we had a conversation even just earlier before we were talking about drawing in the right people, the right missions. How do you see that going for you?
Yeah, that's the question. I'm back to the question for me again. Right. So we have created a brand that's extremely popular and I love serving everybody. And we are now getting 3 to 5 inquiries a day. And it's just,
Wow.
I know it's crazy. It is so crazy. You take this baby who's worked
Wow.
for so long and then all of a sudden, it's really fun. So we are now at the point I was like, how do we scale this? How do we serve? So one of the big things we're doing is all this coaching that I do with people, and you're going through it right now. I created a process, we call it the one-page book plan. And it's this vision board canvas that we create, and it's answering 9 key questions that helps us together identify what book you need to write and how you're going to use it. So that at the end of it, like we see it, it's all the answers are on one page, and that's how we see the alignment, because it's visually a canvas that we do. And so once we have that alignment, then I'm confident you know what book you need to write. We've documented on this vision board, and then I can hand it to my team. And now I know my editors, the story coach, the project manager, the designer, everybody can see what you and I built together. So the big thing I did last year was, in the last 2 years, was really standardizing this and figuring out how to coach effectively on these and get people to the best answer faster. And so once I got that, now we're turning it into a workshop model where I can teach people in a workshop in a day how to answer these questions. So what used to take me 4 to 5 months I can achieve in a few hours with people to get you to the idea of this is what book you need to write. And so we're going to do our very first live in-person version of this in Scottsdale, which is crazy because I'm in Indiana. I'm here where Purdue University is. So I'm just an hour outside of Indy and 2 from Chicago. But we have a crazy amount of authors down in Scottsdale, including Tammy, and we have 8 authors, incredible authors down in Scottsdale. And Dina Patton is one of them. We've got the whole list, and like you're friends with, I think, like I see you at their book signing parties. I'm like, y'all are together without me. Like we're coming down there. So we're going to
And
do this event
you
there.
have some big names too. I mean, you have some names that are well known, and I'm not going to share unless you're comfortable. But there,
Well, they're on my shelf, right? They're on my shelf. That's
yeah,
it.
you've worked with some very big people and helping them achieve their big mission. So anyway, keep
Yeah.
going.
So yeah, I mean, we got Deborah Boblet, Susie Pinkard. Susie's not from Scottsdale, but she's a State Farm executive, retired. And we'll be there. Ed Rush is going to be there at Scottsdale at this event on the 27th. Who else have we got? We've worked with Dina Patton, Amy Carney, sweet Amy. And we've also worked with Danielle Worth and Lane Amon. Like we've got 8 authors in that area, which is just incredible. And then, yeah, we're going to have some fun there. And everybody's going to be present. We're going to put a microphone in front of you. We want people asking. We've got everything from people who like Dina, who's had her book out for like 5 or 6 years now, to you who is right in the middle of this planning phase and we don't know what it looks like. And so we just want to get everybody together. We're going to help figure out what book you need to write and then learn, like, are you a good fit for working with us? So we keep going and help you write your book and publish it and get it out there.
Right. Well, and I love how you're getting back into really what the mission of your business is, which is niche. I mean, what is your niche? That's really what it's encompassed in even your name and your own branding for like, you need to find your niche and what is that? And you help people get sight and vision into what that is for them. So I think that's really cool. And again, super aligned because that's how it all works. So for the Scottsdale
Well,
event
I
too.
want to tell you something.
What?
Something kind of fun on that is I have no idea where this business name came from. Like it only,
Oh,
yeah, well, that's a fun story. Like, you're
tell
out there with
me.
owner trying to figure out what URLs are available. And so somehow I came up with Niche Pressworks. If it's funny because in hindsight, I would have just gone with Niche Press. That could have been easier. But I just bought that domain literally today. I just officially transferred it. So you'll see that when we may shorten the brand name to Niche Press eventually. But yeah,
Wow.
it's a God alignment thing that it only clicked in the last 2 years, this whole idea of niche leaders and niche movement makers and how that brand is relevant to all the things that we're called and meant to be. So I'm like, I got a front row seat to see what's happening. Where are we going? Like, this is really fun. I know I have my vision, but I never thought, I told you earlier, we've got 3 clients who are billionaires, which is just crazy to me. I'm a Midwest girl with a degree in art. Like, okay. But this is, again, once you find, let's just go, I tell my girls, like, don't worry about what your college degree is. Let's get you out of college. Let's get you going because you just don't know how all of these things are going to line up someday. And it's going to create this beautiful opportunity for you that was what always was what you were intended to do.
Exactly. It's what you came here to do. I love it that when you were saying that whole story, I was covered in goosebumps. I get goosebumps a lot when I'm getting like confirmation on things. And it's funny because it is so true, especially with a brand or a business. People all of a sudden you're like, what am I going to call this? And it's amazing if you pay attention to the synchronicities that line up as it suddenly surfaces and you're like, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. That's what happened with the branding with my new creator studios when Eric and I were kind of figuring out what that was going to be, it literally just bubbled to the top. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's it. You just know when that's it, you just know what it is. So
Yeah.
it's no different with anything that we do. So even, especially with books and when you're writing, it's like, it just all of a sudden, it kind of like you and I yesterday, we were talking about what my book name is going to be. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it just bubbles to the top. It's amazing.
Yeah. People, I just sit back and wonder. And when I get on a call like with you, I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen in the next hour, but I know the answers are going to show up. We just are obedient to the process and we kind of go through it. And, in a very real way, I tell people it's like, this will feel messy. It's like we've got all these Legos in a box. We're going to dump them on the table. And these Legos are your experiences, your stories, your skills, all the things you're thinking about. Like we're going to dump them on the table and we're just going to start sorting them. And pretty soon we'll know we've got the pieces that we need to build the thing that you want. And if we don't have a
Wow.
couple
That's
of pieces,
great.
create the pieces. But at the end of the day, my goal is what do all these pieces fit together to do? And it always shows up. I think it's just super fun.
That's a great visual. I love the Lego visual.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Because you're right. All the pieces are there. You're just
Yeah.
going to start pulling them together and figure out what are we going to create?
Yeah.
What are we going to build? What are we going to put together? And it's colorful and different. And you're like, oh, I didn't see that piece coming in or that piece, but this fits perfect. Right. And like you said, I love what you said too. This has been very, very true for me in all of my relationships and people that I end up sitting across a table from, is that I really don't even know what we're going to talk about. But then all of a sudden, this beautiful conversation and soul sharing just evolves, and it turns to such a beautiful, safe space to just be real and get honest. So like I was saying before, I'm sure that as you go through this process with people, it naturally evolves into just a real touching experience, because you're talking about people's greatest things that pull them, that are calling to them, and you're helping them step into that. That's really powerful that you're doing that with people.
Well, I think, you get to be vulnerable with me. Like the transformation of our authors is profound, right? And it's just at the beginning of it, but you get this chance, which is unique in a book, right? I could have done other things, but you get this chance in a book to quietly go off and be alone with your thoughts. So it's like this journaling process, but it's forcing you like to get clear. Well, like in a book, you can't wing it. Like we can wing this conversation, right? And
Right.
then
But
where
we're
it goes
not.
is where it goes. You can't wing it in a book, right? You're going to have, there's structure that's involved. There's ideas that have to be presented in a specific order, right? And there's all these things that we include even in the one-page book plan, so that by the end of the book, the person's gotten the results that you promised them. And so there's structure involved in there, but at the same time, it's this beautiful creative process that you only get to experience because you did the work when you go sit down and write.
Right. Right. It's
And
just
then,
it evolves.
yeah, but then the cool thing is it's like all the advisors that we bring in, like, so you get me, and then you got an accountability coach, and then you get Dina, because Dina's part of our process. So our authors get to work with her on mindset stuff and identity work, because when you sit down to write, I want you writing to who you're becoming, not who you've been in the past. Like, so we're working everything towards the brand that you're building. And then we've got Michael Hauge, who's the Hollywood storytelling coach. Like all these people come in on this journey and they're helping born, like, grow your baby. Let's talk about it as a baby analogy. And like, it's all these teachers that are coming in and helping adjust the baby. So when it's born, like you're looking at it going, I did this. Like you're so excited. And so like our authors are so incredibly proud of their books
Oh
because they're
yeah.
so much better than they thought it could be on their own. And
Right.
and I want to applaud you, like you're trusting the process, because sometimes it's really weird. We're just dumping Legos on the table and you're like, Nicole, you got a plan here? I'm like, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I see it.
I think it's beautiful. Well, that's how I roll now. I mean, I get it. I really do understand. It's like you can't know the unknowable, and that's actually the beauty in not knowing is letting it just. You just gotta. One of my other friends that was on here the other day, she said they're breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs start presenting themselves, and you just take one breadcrumb at a time, and then all of a sudden you've created something that is a masterpiece that was always intended for you. You just didn't know how it was going to come together.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful process. I wholeheartedly appreciate your process and you and the energy that you bring to what this is. I think you've really created and built a beautiful business and a model and a way for people to really, really express their light and what they came here to do, no matter what it looks like. So I'm so grateful that I've gotten closer to you, and we've become friends, and now we're going through this process together, and I love to share it. I mean, I sing it from the rooftops. I love to support you and everything that you're doing. I encourage people, if you are local, to take part in this one day or one page book plan event that's in Scottsdale. What are the dates? Let's talk about that for a second so people can engage if they want to.
Yeah, well, you don't even have to be local. Fly in. Shoot, I'm bringing my whole team. There's 5 of us. We're flying down to Scottsdale for this. So it's Friday, September 27th is we're going to get together. We're actually going to have an event before then on Monday via Zoom, so we could get some work done before we get together. And then we're going to be together all day on the 27th. And we're going to go through, we'll do 6 of the 9 decisions. We'll do 3 on the Zoom meeting on the Monday before, and then we'll finish up with the 6 of the decisions in person. And by the end of the book, you're going to have a lot more clarity, right? You'll go home. There'll be more over the weekend. Like you'll have more epiphanies. You'll get a little finer thing, but we're going to get you, we're going to start getting everything in alignment so that you're like, oh, this, I'm starting to see it. Because people don't understand, like, you just don't even know what's possible. I think for you, what's fun, if I can pull back to you really quick, is
Yeah.
you have the clarity of the movement, like you're way out here. And so what we're doing is we're coming back in for you and getting clarity on, well, what's the doors, what's the boundaries of the book that creates the most opportunities for you? Because the worst thing we could do is create a book that pigeonholed you in a certain area. So
Right.
we're like, what kind of book can we create that gives you the most opportunities and the most engagement, and yet leaves doors wide open for all the other books that are going to be born out of this and needed out of this, right? And
Right.
so, it works both ways. Some people like you just have incredibly big visions already, and now we got to get back in and we got to disassemble the
Right.
thing, the Legos, right? Start
Yeah,
saying,
that's
okay, well,
very
what
true.
pieces do we need first in order to achieve that? So,
Exactly. Well, that's why I trust the process. It's like, okay, big vision is great, but you got to assemble and let things kind of come together. And then it just leads to the next thing, which we don't even know what that is, which is what's exciting about it. And that's what I'm truly embracing and trusting in this process is I really don't know what's coming. And that's the best part about it. Honestly, that didn't used to be how I lived, but it
right.
certainly is now. I know that that's now the gift. So I embrace it full heartedly, and it's a lot of fun. And I would say to anybody that is listening, and if two things. First, if you're a person that's out there and feels like, I've always wanted to write a book, or you have this little light inside of you that's just kind of it's just buried, but you're not sure what to do with it. You're like, I've always thought people have said I should write a book. If that's truly poking at you, first of all, you need to take a look at that and ask yourself the question, okay, what is that? What's holding me back? Why am I, okay, maybe I need to like really look at this. So kind of let it surface to the top, bubble to the top, take a good look at it and figure out what that is, because it may be something way bigger than you think. Yes, a book may be part of it, but it's probably something else that's calling you to a bigger purpose. So listen to that little voice that's calling you. Even if you're a person that has never, ever dreamed of writing a book, if there is something calling you, you need to pay attention to that, because when you're listening to that little voice or that nudge or all the things that keep coming, you're like, why do I keep hearing that? And I'm hearing this over here and I'm hearing this over there. And pay attention to those things because they are always there for a reason. So it could be pulling you into something that's bigger, which could eventually turn into something like a book. You never know what it's going to be. But the key is to really trust that and know that if there's something pulling you or calling you, you're meant to pay attention and to step into it and not be afraid of it or think, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. All the doubts that come in our minds, which we do as people, that's just what we do. And try to mute that out and really take a look at it. Get quiet, take a look. Don't be afraid. Be like, what does that mean for me? And you might be surprised at what tends to surface. And like I said, back to actual book writing with Nicole and her beautiful business that she's built to help you do this, use this as a tool. I highly encourage you to take a look at this opportunity. If you can engage, like she said, drive in, fly in, if you're local, whatever it is, if there's something that's pulling you to this and this is striking a chord with you, pay attention because there's a reason that it's striking a chord with you. So I highly encourage you to engage. You'll get to be around incredible people who have walked this journey and that are on this path, and it might surprise you what's possible because we always tend to surprise ourselves what we can do. We're capable of so much. We are such bright lights. So
Mhm.
I highly encourage you to engage.
Yeah, come
What,
join us.
yeah,
Come.
what is the best way for them to tap into this so they can actually take a look at the event and consider?
So you have to use www. I think there was a tech issue I just didn't want to fight, but www.onepagebookplan.com. And if you're listening to us after September 27th, we'll advertise our next one. The next one will be virtual and it won't have Tammy there. It won't have Dina. It won't have Ed Rush. It won't have all the people. So I highly encourage you, come live. It's a lot of fun. We're going to have a good day. And you can join us in and get to meet some incredible people and spend the day with them and hear their stories of their journey. So, but that is it. Onepagebookplan.com is where all the juicy details are.
Okay, good. And then also beyond that, if it's something that they're thinking for someone else or like, I need to refer somebody, what is just the way for them to find you, Nicole, to tap into your service and just start poking around and seeing if this is meant for them and if they want to pursue it further outside of just the event?
Yeah, I'm sure you can put it in the show notes. So,
I
um,
will.
yeah, nichepressworks.com. And we talked about this, some people say niche, some people say niche. We like to say the riches are in the niches.
I
So
love
we
it.
go niche pressworks, but so you go to nichepressworks.com. You can also then find there and you can go, there's a link to any master classes. So we're always doing free events on Zoom that you can come to. So that's always that event schedule is always on nicheleaders.com. So we go through this again. Nichepressworks.com is our main site. Nicheleaders.com is our site of our upcoming events. And then the really big one where we want everybody to start is the onepagebookplan.com. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one where we get going on your book right away.
Oh, good, good. So I will include all of that in the notes, so you'll be able to tap into those things. And again, if you're hearing this soon, which, this is this month because we're in September, or we're almost in September. We're almost there. Feels like we're there.
Yeah.
So September this month, so it's coming close, and I highly, highly encourage you to engage. It's been um, very broadening for me. I'm already on quite an exciting journey, but this is just another piece of that. So I would love to see all of you there. So if you can come, we would love to have you. And I encourage you to engage. Anything else you want to share? Any words of wisdom before we part?
I would say come and you'll get to hear the early stories of what Tammy's book is going to be titled and what she's thinking about. And because we'll put her on stage and we'll talk about what she's figured out so far for her journey. So I want
Yeah.
no spoilers yet. We won't do
Nope.
that. But
No,
we
no,
met
no.
yesterday and
Yeah.
we had some really cool things, and she's working on some research that I'm excited about. So
I know it is exciting. It's very exciting. So, well, thank you so much for being here, Nicole. I'm grateful to you. I'm so happy that our paths have crossed and we're getting to do the things that we're doing together. I'm always going to be one of your biggest fans and biggest cheerleaders. So I'm grateful to you. And I know we'll be together for a long time. So thank you again. And thank all of you for being here with us today on Tammy Tuesday. If you are listening, you can certainly subscribe. We are on YouTube, so you can subscribe with us on YouTube as well and watch these lovely recordings. And if you have additional things that you want to seek out, you can find us on social media at Tammy Tuesday Life, as well as on my website, tammytuesday.com. If you're interested in engaging with me on some of my heart healing energy sessions that I have and I offer here locally, please go there and you can click on free consult, and I'm able to book you there. And if you have any questions of any kind, please feel free to reach out or make comments in the notes here below the podcast. Always leaving you with lots of love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.